Good morning. I call to order the MES Board of Directors audit meeting for May 23rd, 2024. This is Molly Jones, Chair of the Audit Committee meeting. Ms. Fuller, noting the presence of a quorum and the full committee members, would you? The committee members were given the copies of the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting for October 19, 2023. Are there any objections, corrections, or discussions sought by the committee members on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, the meeting minutes stand approved as submitted. Our next agenda item is the presentation of the House Bill 78 by Mr. Tossi.
Good morning. Just making sure everybody can hear me.
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, you can go to the next one. So during the 2024 legislative session, there was a bill that was introduced by MES to take care of a number of different items in our statute. So I'm going to go over those real briefly and then focus on one issue or two issues that are relevant to the audit committee. The first was it alters the definition of municipalities, so it's a little more inclusive of the types of entities that we work with. The bill also allows MES, instead of having to provide a contract for every municipality and county that requests work, we can instead just provide a proposal. These were requested by our Assistant Attorney General and were passed without any amendments. The next is relevant to the board, but not necessarily the audit committee. It authorizes the board secretary, authorizes the board to allow the board secretary to delegate some responsibilities to an employee of the MES. So this is an authorization that already exists in law for the board treasurer. We extended that to the board secretary so that the actual board secretary doesn't necessarily need to handle sort of Open Meetings Act compliance items, administrative items that that Pam usually takes care of with respect to board meeting responsibilities for Open Meetings Act. The last item that the bill takes care of is what I wanted to focus on today. And it reconfigures the annual financial audit, which is what's required after, as soon as practical after the close of the fiscal year. And also the annual report, which current law says is due 90 days after the close of the fiscal year. So both from starting July 1, 2024, which is when the bill effective date is, both are going to be due at the same time. So it kind of marries them and their effective dates or their due dates. Both are going to be due on November 15th of each year. You go to the next slide. So just a little bit of background. Current law, as I was stating earlier, requires that the annual financial audit is due as soon as practical after the close of the fiscal year. The audit has to be made by an independent certified public accountant. And, we procure that audit annually. There's also a requirement for MES to have a certified public accountant do what's called a misallocated expenses audit. This was part of the MES Reform Act of 2021. And even though the interpretation of this audit was that it was supposed to be a one-time audit, the language still exists in law, and it's a little bit unclear as to whether or not MES is required to do this on an annual basis or not. Next slide. By the way, if you have any questions about any of this, just feel free to chime in the middle of the presentation. I don't need to necessarily hold all the questions until the end. So what did the bill do? The bill with respect to the annual financial audit. The bill established a firm new due date for the annual financial audit on November 15th of each year. It also repealed the language related to the misallocated expenses audit. So our interpretation of that provision was that it was a one-time audit. The Department of Legislative Services agreed with that. And so we proposed that this language be repealed, and that was approved by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. And then finally, the annual financial audit must also now be included in our annual report. And as I mentioned earlier, both are going to be due to the General Assembly and the governor by November 15th of each year. That's a legal requirement that we have to submit those by that due date. Go to the next slide. I think this is the last slide that I have. So we got to back up that from that due date a little bit and just make sure that we understand the scope of what the November 15th date means. It means that we have to submit the audit on or before November 15th. We also need to provide the audit and the annual report to the Department of Budget Management and the General Assembly by the due date. But the board also has the responsibility to review the audit. So my interpretation of this is that the audit really should be aiming to be completed probably by the 3rd or 4th week of October, so that the board has the opportunity to review the audit as is outlined also in current law before the audit is due to be submitted to the General Assembly by November 15th. We also like to have the annual report reviewed. This is not a statutory item, but the annual report needs to be reviewed by the governor's office in advance as well. So we usually have to give them 2 weeks. So in conclusion, the language prior to this bill was pretty vague, and it was also unclear. The language related to having to include a financial assessment in the annual report was inconsistent with the annual financial audit language. So those provisions were cleaned up, made much clearer, and then now there is a very clear and firm due date for the annual financial audit every year. And that concludes my remarks, and I would be happy to answer any questions with respect to the bill and the new provisions.
Board members, any questions? I have a quick question. I know the board has a responsibility to review the audit. Our next audit committee meeting is in October, so maybe that's not for you, Mr. Jeff. Will that be ready for the board to review?
Does anybody know when the next audit committee meeting is scheduled for? Exactly what date that's set for?
When are the board meetings? The 4th week?
Yeah, the board meeting is usually the last week of the month, and the audit committee would be the week before that.
Yeah.
October 24th.
Thank you, Casey.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so the provision in the law says that the board has the responsibility to review the audit. The provision in law does not say that the board audit committee has a responsibility. Now, I know that's a technicality, and I think the audit committee would probably want the opportunity to review the audit. So it would be really up to RSM, I think, to answer that question, whether or not they think they can complete the audit by that date. But in reality, the law, to be in compliance with the law, the full board would need to review the audit by the board meeting date.
Yeah. And it's going to take us, when we do the annual report, once we get the audit to put in there, it takes a couple weeks to put it all together. And like you said, we've got to get it to the governor's office. So really, we need RSM to have that to us by, I guess, no later than the 24th.
Yeah. And we understand, I anticipate RSM would have some comments on this, but we understand that once the audit is completed, it cannot be changed. So we would be including the audit in the annual report, and we would be noting that this is final. So while the annual report might have some comments from the governor's office during their review, we would be firm in that they could not have any comments on the financial audit. Molly, does that satisfy your question?
Yes, as long as the board gets time to review it, that's fine. And I guess we'll have to clarify that.
And by the way, I'm streaming from Arizona, and it's 6:30 in the morning here. So good morning, everybody.
If there are no further questions, thank you, Mr. Tossi, for your presentation. We'll move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is the presentation of the RSM presentation of the FY24 audit plan. And for that, I call upon Ms. Valerie Coleman.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And I believe we have rights to share. If so, Jean will project our presentation for FY24.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
In the presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much. And again, we're here to present the 2024 audit strategy. So we'll go on to the next slide. It's hard to believe it's that time of year again. I know the last time we connected was in October. But again, RSM is engaged to perform the financial statement audit and the Uniform Grant Guidance audit for June 30th, 2024. So this presentation is really just to kind of give you an overview of our planned audit approach, including the importance of communication overall between our two parties. So we'll go over some of the summary of key planning areas, our audit strategy, the reporting matters, and of course, answer any questions that arise. So quick summary as it relates to the key planning areas. As always, whenever we do perform an audit, we do take an unbiased risk-based approach in designing our audit procedures. That helps us to determine the nature, timing, and extent of those procedures performed to be consistent with our risk assessment procedures. So audit timing, I know we just went through a very big couple of slides of presentation relating to the audit timing. We had a preliminary conversation with management as it relates to our audit timing, and we collectively decided moving things up. We want to ensure we adhere to this deadline. We know the importance of it. So what that means is that we've added what is called a really robust planning week, which is going to take place June 10th to just get us started, get us going through the procedures such as the understanding of the entity and as it relates to changes that transpired, walkthroughs of those transaction cycles, preliminary analytical procedures, just again, getting a head start as it relates to everything for June 30th, 2024, with the hopes of even starting some testing with 10 months of the year closed. We have scheduled our year-end, going back, audit to start the week of July 29th. Again, moving things up. We want to ensure November 15th doesn't creep up before we are there. And our next touch point in October, we will have you that draft that is needed for your review. And we're going to go a little bit more detail on the timing on page 12. Some emphasis areas that you are to be made aware of is that there are areas that we deem to be significant risk. We're going to let you know what that is today, so you are aware of what those areas are. If you'd like to kind of keep track of that within the next 6 months or so, that's more likely a good piece of advice to do so. But again, we also want to let you know that there are certain matters within the financial report that require external experts to help us. Your financial statements does have some valuation specialists that we utilize on the pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities. You go ahead on your end, utilize a specialist to help you determine those liabilities on our end, we use actual specialists to help us determine that your specialist came to the right conclusion. So wanted to give you that heads up along the way that there are some external parties we do utilize that have some specialized skills that is important for your financials. So the engagement team. So again, I am here as the audit partner. I've outlined on the left who those specialists are. We have one as it relates to both OPEB and pension, as well as just an overall healthcare specialist to assist on those valuations of those actual reports. Underneath me, Jean is our audit manager, along with an audit supervisor and associate that will be assisting with the audit again this year. One of the things that we communicated with management is an approach that RSM has taken the last year as it relates to assigning our talent to areas of specialty. So what this means is everyone in your engagement team is a public sector or government specialist. What it requires is for you to be that type of auditor, you need additional training, the esteemed Yellow Book training. So there's additional requirements that our staff takes on, and these individuals have that training. We find it, especially with the onset of the advent of COVID, where we don't necessarily have borders to restrict us anymore. The best thing to do is to provide you people that know GASB, which is the world that you reside in, and these individuals have that specialty. So we, again, had a kickoff with management as it relates to our team and how that strategy will help us stay on time, as well as it relates to having the right folks on the engagement. And to the right, we have what is a second partner. This person does an engagement quality review at the end. So essentially, our team works with your management team to complete the audit. We have an unbiased person that is not part of the day-to-day that comes in the end, reads the report, looks at a few key areas within our file to ensure that quality remains. So we just wanted you to be aware of that individual. Communication, again, the best way for us to ensure that we have a full understanding of the organization is to have this two-way communication that we do connect with the audit committee and members of management. We've just outlined in this particular slide our responsibilities as well as your responsibility. It just helps us ensure that we've captured all the right risk for the organization and we're made aware of any significant changes within the organizations or accounting treatments or things of that nature to take into consideration. Independence, we wanted to let you know we are independent of the organization. No one has any sort of family ties or any sort of connections within MES. That is required to be maintained. We follow 2 independence rules for this organization, meaning we are required just in general as CPAs to follow the AICPA. But again, because this is a governmental audit, it increases by ensuring that we also follow the Government Accountability Office independence rules. This just outlines both responsibilities as it relates to that, but our team is fully independent of the organization. Thanks, Jean.
All right.
Go ahead.
Of course. Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. As Valerie mentioned, I'm Jean Borno. I will be serving under Valerie as the engagement manager. And as Valerie mentioned earlier, independence is a crucial aspect of our audit. For this reason, we design specific policies and procedure to ensure that we provide reasonable assurance that the firm as a whole and our personnel comply with the applicable, like Valerie mentioned, AICPA and GAO independence standards. We take independence seriously because we know it's essential to maintain the trust and confidence of management, our clients, and the public at large. Our policy addresses potential threat to independence, including financial interests, business and family relationships, and any non-audit services that may affect our independence. All right, for the audit planning process. So our audit approach is designed specifically to be tailored to the MES unique need and circumstances. We believe obtaining a deep understanding of your entity is essential and to conducting an effective audit. We generally start this planning process by obtaining a deep understanding of the entity. And we do that by starting the discussion with the audit committee, like we're doing today, and discussion with management to get insight into your specific objectives, strategies, and risk. We also get into the materiality side of things. We can talk about materiality a little bit later. Internal control is another aspect of our audit process that I'll get into a little bit later as well. But now into our risk assessment process. So this is a comprehensive process that we dive into to look into the MES specific circumstances. We use our understanding of the financial statements, including any susceptibility to material misstatements due to fraud or errors, or any instances of non-compliance as well. And lastly, we do discussion as well between the team, the engagement team, me, Valerie, the EQR that Valerie mentioned earlier, to make sure that we consider everything and we consider any potential vulnerabilities in the financial statements or compliance. And this discussion ensures that our audit is comprehensive and effective. Now into the concept of materiality. Materiality is a crucial aspect of our planning and executing our audit. We apply materiality in various ways. First, this includes our professional judgment and considering the financial statements and any compliance need of the users of the financial statements. We set an overall materiality to make sure that there's a set number that we look into as far as any misstatements or anything that's happening in the compliance realm. Underneath the overall materiality, we set a performance materiality. So the performance materiality is set at a level that's lower than overall materiality. This is to make sure that we account for any risk of undetected misstatements. And this guide our process of risk and extend to further audit procedure as well. Materiality include a quantitative aspect and a qualitative aspect. And this is to make sure that we get a full understanding of the significant impact that the financial statements may have on the users of the financial statements. All right. Oh, also, at the end of the audit, we'll provide you with overall anything that we find in the financial statements as far as uncorrected misstatements or any non-compliance that we deem to be significant. And we'll issue that report to you as well. All right, internal control and compliance. So for internal control and compliance, the internal control is a crucial and essential aspect of our audit. So what we normally do is we obtain an understanding of the internal control over the financial reporting process and any compliance. This is to make sure that we plan our audit properly and make sure that we time our audit procedures in the correct manner. However, even if we obtain the understanding, we want to make sure that you're aware as well that our audit procedures are not designed to provide any assurance on internal control to identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And as part of our audit, we'll issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance related to the financial statements and any major program that we test. We'll also issue a compliance report with laws, statutes, regulations, and any term set by the federal awards that you receive. As part of our engagement, you've engaged us as well to issue 2 additional reports. This is the schedule of indirect cost rate calculation and schedule of fringe benefits cost calculation. We also were engaged to provide an agreed upon procedure over the organization's compliance with certain expense policies. Valerie got into the significant risk briefly earlier. So these are the 4 main significant risks that we identify based on our understanding of your financial statements and discussion with management so far. First is management override of control. this is a set risk that we apply over all of our audits that we perform. So this is just to say that, okay, there's a possibility that management could improperly review, manipulate, right, the journal entries and any processes that don't have appropriate segregation of duty or level of review. We've also set some response to that. So what we'll do is we'll identify certain journal entries, manual journal entries for testing, and we'll set our testing to identify certain these specific risks. The second one is fraudulent revenue recognition. So this is a risk that the revenue being recorded, the revenue transactions being recorded did not actually occur. So we plan also some process to mitigate those risks. So we'll perform some brief test of controls, and we will look at as well the revenue process, how it's set, and we'll sample the revenue transaction for testing as well. The next one is your OPEB, or post-employment benefits liability, and pension liability. So this risk is standard as well as far as government entities are concerned, because there's a risk that your actuary might inaccurately value the liabilities for the OPEB or the pension liability. And as Valerie mentioned earlier, so what we do to respond to that risk is hiring an outside specialist as well to look into those liabilities. So what they'll do, they'll look at the valuation methodology, assumptions, and taking a look at the census data. The last one is the landfill closure and post-closure cost liability. So this is almost the same risk as the OPEB and pension. So there's a risk that the liability might be inaccurate, right? So we've set some testing around that. So we're gonna look at the input that management is using to calculate that liability, and we'll look at to look at the proper valuation of the post-closure liability. All right, we talk about timing. So as far as timing is concerned, so as Valerie mentioned, so we're gonna start our planning or preliminary audit work to be done on June 10th. And then obviously you'll have your year end is June 30th. And August, the week of July 29th through the August 26th, this is when we'll do our audit field work. That's when we'll do the bulk of our work. And then we set the timeline for September to start wrapping up and making sure that we start looking at reporting and timing and all that. So we are planning to give you a report around the first week of October and provide final reviews around October as well. Before we're hoping to give all that to you before the next audit committee meeting, like you mentioned. And also we have the agreed upon procedure report that will issue in November.
Yep.
With that, I'll pass it along to Valerie to talk about reporting matter and to close us out.
Thank you, Jean. And basically, we wanted to let you know ahead of time, we do expect to have an other matter paragraph, and this is in regards to your annual report and the inclusion of our financial statements within that annual report. We are required to ensure wherever our statements get included into, the substance of that overall package still aligns with the conclusions of the audit. So we do read that annual report, and we ensure that we perform our procedures related to that. Wanted to let you know ahead of time that this is an expected other matter paragraph in the opinion. And one matter to kind of bring to your attention, we always want to let everyone know what's going on in the GASB world. This is a quiet year, which is really nice because the last 3 years have been really large GASBs to adopt. We won't have anything of substance to really dive into until next year, which will be GASB 101 on the compensated absence. We'll ensure we start having conversations with management ahead of time so that they are aware of this, so that they can start deploying the right adoption for fiscal 25. But overall, we have a quiet year, which is really nice. and wanted to make you guys aware of those 2 new GASBs that are on the horizon. And really at the moment, I will close out this presentation to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Board members or staff, any questions? I did just wanted a quick clarification, Mr. Borno, if you could go back to when the report's going to come. Is that around October? I'm just concerned about if the board is going to have enough time to review it before it goes in November 15th deadline.
So in the past, what we've done is the next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for October 24th, we would present the results of what we have thus far in the audit. So the thought process is, I guess I would need some clarity from you guys as well as management. When do you want that prior, right? If the next meeting is October 24th, we've bumped up everything to be ahead, so we ensure that we are meeting the required timing. Do you want a draft of the financials by October 15th? Is that substantial amount of time? I guess if you can kind of give us some direction and we'll ensure we adhere to it.
Yeah, I think that would be good, but we'll get back to you with the exact date, depending on the availability of the audit committee, board of directors and the meeting. And we have to give them a week ahead, so I'll get back to you.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I have a question. Will the draft be already done with your review process internally at RSM? So your draft is going to be your final. So if we don't have any major changes, it's already gone through the people above you, Valerie, right?
You got it. And that's one of the things that we are slated to do in September, actually.
Okay.
So because we've moved everything up, we have our what we consider our wrap up is where everybody's just clearing questions the first 2 weeks of September, and it goes to that quality reviewer after that. So mid-September, the quality reviewer, and then I would say by September 30th, we would have had a draft gone through the quality reviewer with maybe the first week of October. That's it. But besides that, it would have by October 15th, if that is the date you want to stick to.
Excellent.
Yep. It's good.
So this is Brennan. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Glass, if you had other questions.
I'm done with thoughts.
So based on that timing, would we then be able to get a copy of the draft in early October and then maybe a presentation October 24th? And I assume there's an expectation that we'll vote as a whole board on October 31.
That is correct.
Yeah, so the more review time, the better, I think. And I personally, I don't think a week is enough time. So if we could get it, a week or two prior to that October 24th date, that would be ideal.
October 10th. October 10th it is.
Sounds good.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ms. Vance. Any more questions, committee members? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. And Mr. Patel and Ms. Condra, you'll keep the board apprised of the report, right?
Yes.
Thank
He said
you.
yes.
I heard him.
Okay.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the auditor's report. And for that, I'll call Ms. Vincent Condra to present the report.
That was last year's.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
I think that is important because they never.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
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 And we're
Loud
having
and
a
clear.
little discussion here. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
So, Valerie, you have a presentation for fiscal year 2023 audit conclusion, correct?
Yes, we do.
Can I ask for that if it's okay with the audit committee and everyone present? Because last time when they presented in October, that was not the final presentation of the audit. After that, other audits were performed also. So if it's okay, we should discuss a few minutes with that.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I can be given share rights, and I'm more than happy to share an executive summary relating to that. This presentation that is in your board package was essentially presented to you in our last touch point, which was October 19th. The only change that's been made is the summary page that outlines the conclusions of the various audits that we concluded on subsequent to that meeting. So I'm more than happy to give you a quick summary relating to that. Hopefully everyone can see this.
Yep.
Perfect. So again, this is the last touch point we did that was presented October 19th. We're going to just represent a few matters today so you are caught up as it relates to fiscal 2023. And where I want to concentrate is two areas: the executive summary that concluded where we had various issuances. So again, all of these are relating to June 30th, 2023. So the financial statements and the compliance report was completed in December 22nd, as well as the indirect cost schedules. And then we came back and completed the compliance report issuance. So the compliance report is pretty much done at the same time as the financial statements, but there's a few matters that you issue and you upload to the data collection form that is required. And that gets done within 30 days. So that was done within the 30-day requirement. And then we also finalized the expense report that was defined by the policies by March 15th. This is the third year that we are completing this expense report against the purchase card policies, the supplier invoice policies. So there were specified requirements that were determined about 3 years ago after the Reform Act. And this is really the first time that we've completed it with no findings to present to the board for consideration or observations to be made aware. The last couple were small matters, but really for 2023, there was nothing to report of significance to or deviations of the policies. Some matters to just let you know. So there was a plan audit strategy letter that was issued in August 30th, and nothing changed from that plan strategy letter. The significant risks that were identified in that letter were the same that we adhered to. And the organization did adopt a new GASB in the prior year. It was GASB 96 on the subscription-based information technology arrangements. Essentially, this is the leasing standard for technology arrangements. We did not have any audit adjustments or uncorrected misstatements to present to the board. So what that means is the draft of the financials or the trial balance that management presented to us to audit remain the same numbers that were included in the final reports. No adjustments were proposed or identified as uncorrected. As a result of that, we had no deficiencies in internal control to report. Normally, if there are any sort of adjustments to propose, that's because of a lack of a control that did not get implemented correctly, and there would be a corresponding deficiency to report. But again, you had none, so that we remained at no deficiencies to report. The other area in this presentation that I wanted to kind of hone in on is we are required to share. So everything here, just to let you know, was all talked about and presented with no changes in the October 19th. The only matter is in the appendices. Any sort of significant written communications between our firm and the management of the service is required to be attached. So we just wanted to let you know these are the final representation letters for all the audits that we issued within this package for your review if you'd like. Aside from that, again, what we presented on the 19th remained with the exception of these finalization of these audits. So I will stop sharing if there's any questions.
Any questions, board members?
I have a comment. I want to thank Valerie and her staff, for professional, thorough audit for the last year. I think we're gonna start with most of the new audit team, including the audit manager, Jen. So we welcome the new team for MES Audit. And as usual, like what Valerie is still there for consistency, and she knows how our financial system works and how our policies and procedures work. So it'll be very easy for Jean to have a running start. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did Mr. King get a promotion?
No, as I sort of indicated, we kind of realigned our folks to be more based on the industry of specialty. So
Okay.
Mr. King technically sort of worked on these types of engagements on a part-time basis. So we just wanted to ensure that he goes towards the type of engagements he does on a full-time. And again, we bring forth teams that work on government all year long for you. So that's really the change.
Excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tell them we wish him well.
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I guess good morning,
Thank you.
everyone.
Morning,
Good morning.
Winsome.
Good
How
morning,
are
Ms.
you
Winston.
guys doing? So, this is my discussion points for this morning. We're going to talk about internal audit updates, talk about the FY24 audits, revisit the plan again, and then talk about internal audit staff expansions. Talk about month of May is internal audit May, and talk about some changes in the IIA standard we're going to give you guys an update on the billable project activities. Think this is the internal audit month. I think this is in here twice, but we're going to talk about the draft FY25 and 26 audit plan. Next slide. So for FY24, this was an unplanned audit. This was looking at segregation of duties review. This is the scope. We assessed the effectiveness of MES current internal controls related to SODs. This was our results. And our results was ineffective high materiality. And if you can click again. And let's talk about the key management issues that we saw within this review. We saw that there was lacking workday SOD controls. We identified there were potential SOD violations. Again, because we were looking back and a lot of individuals have left the organization, so we call it potential. So we did not see any type of misdeeds or anything like that, but from a IT perspective and looking at it, it looks like there was a potential. So we had to identify that, and then we saw that they were missing SOD oversights, whether it is from IT or from the Workday system itself. Any questions on this? Okay. The next audit that we completed in FY24, and we rarely get effective ones, but this was a good one. This was the review, the Eastern Shore Forest Time and Material Review. This was a request. It was planned, but it was management from the EO team wanted us to review the invoicing process because there was a lot of volatility because it was a commodity type material. So we reviewed that and we didn't find any discrepancies, and on internal controls to monitor that was very good. And so we gave it an audit result of effective. So what we're in progress in FY24, we're currently looking at duplicate payment review. And this is basically looking at duplicate invoices, ensuring that we have enough controls to identify that, whether Workday or within the process of how we review invoices from our projects. So our audit testing completion, we're looking at August 1st. The draft audit report for August 26th, and distribute the final report in September 13th. The upcoming, the next audit we want to look at is review of procurement shortlist selection process. We just finished the A list, and we want to look at that process to make sure it's streamlined and it's being effective, and we're doing the best. It has enough controls to make sure there's no conflict of interest and so forth. Click. So as you see, we had 4 planned audits. For FY24, we're doing 2 right now. One, we're in the progress of testing phase. Other, we're looking to start doing the audit plan due to short of staff and a lot of investigations and consultant work that we do in audit, and which is priority, right? We were only able to do 2. So next slide. So it kind of leads into the internal audit staff expansion. As you guys know, as RSM said, they don't review our internal controls, right? It's up to the audit, internal audit. So even the risk, as you see for our SOD, we already looked at that. So where they identify that would be like a risk factor. So we as internal auditors, we identify those risks internally before others do. So I'm happy that we have done our SOD review. So we're currently fixing, right, our gaps. And because of the way we're structured, we did start out with 1 auditor, me, and now we have an audit trainee. So, but we're looking to expand. And as you see, the new org chart that we have here, we have an open position for Chief of Internal Audit, and open position for Lead Internal Audit Specialist. Alex is still our audit trainee, and we have an open role for Internal Audit Specialist, which we hope that Alex would interview for, and then that would be his next role as his graduating out of from an audit trainee to an Internal Audit Specialist. The reason for our role expansion, as I mentioned, 1, succession planning. This is a big effort that MES has, and internal audit is not exempt from succession planning. 2, we're increasing billable efforts. Right now, Alex is basically 75% of his time is billable. And then the next one is needing resources to perform our planned audits, investigations, special projects, and unplanned audits. Any questions on this?
I think we should mention, Winsome, too, that open internal audit position will be filled in July. We did get somebody that we've interviewed, and we had that person accepted the role. He just is currently working and then wants to take a little bit of time off between.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll have a chief. I'm still acting chief of internal audit, but we'll have a chief of internal audit in July in June, and this will probably be my last audit committee meeting.
Look at her smile. I still want to know how you're going to audit yourself when the AE shortlist.
Well, that's not me. I'm not auditing myself. hopefully, hopefully, Alex is doing a good job, and he'll be the one auditing that. So. All right, next step. So again, wanted to give you an overview of our internal audit staff, how our allocation, how we spend our time, right? So in FY23, we had a total of total hours work, 3,600 basically time. And most of our time, as you see, was spent under doing investigations and unplanned audits, right? So, and the next was planned audit. So, and that was in FY23, and the next was we dealt with projects. So in FY24, it's not, we still have some time left. So, and we already spent 3,200 total hours worked for FY24. But as you see, 56% of our projects, time went to projects, and that's my time as being acting chief of procurement at that time, where the time allocated wasn't spent. It was more I put that on the projects because it was a project, right? and then we had 19% was for investigations, unplanned audits, hotline, and then our planned audits were 15%. So the projects here when also includes on the billable projects. So you can see most of our time went to those. So again, as I mentioned, MES Internal Audit Month, wanted to present to the audit committee that the Institute of Internal Audits, they have changed their standards that we're MES, we are under IIA standards. We followed IIA standards. So it changed, it was implemented in 2017. We have a new standards 2024. It was released January 9th this year, but the IIA has given everyone time to implement this in their organization. So it'll be effective January 9th, 2025. So there's going to be, in saying that, there's going to be a lot of change. We have to make changes to our current internal audit charter. So that's the new CAE would have to do that. So just let you know that will be coming down the pipeline. Next audit. Well, this is a timeline, as I mentioned. So the IIA, they give us resources. That's why we're members, right? And so this is the timeline that they had. This was early on this year. This is when they implemented it in January. The steps that they took, right? And in February, these are other steps that they took, giving us webinars and kind of like training all the auditors on the new standards and giving everyone time and understanding and even ask questions. So before all of this, they had presented a draft and actually gave us internal auditors input towards the new standards. So we were able to read it before it got released and provide input. So these are they're gonna, so Q2 and Q4, they're gonna have a lot of international conference workshops, and this is where they're gonna go over all of this information. And I know we don't do Yellow Book, but when I meet with we have a chief of internal auditors for Maryland, and they talk about the new standards also, and most likely they would probably look at it to say, okay, is there something in that changes for the Yellow Book? So IIA is an international standards that they deal with quality of the internal audits and making sure that the auditors have some accountability also. So we're not just willy-nilly just doing stuff. There's going to be then changes. Is going to be Q1 and Q2, where, as I mentioned, we'll have to present to, probably in October, present to the audit committee our new audit, the charter, so it could be signed, and then the one that we have in place would be archived. So I just wanted to give, you could go back a little bit. I wanted to tell you that go.
I'm trying to.
And dealing with the IIA standards. So we have 15 guiding principles. I just want to give someone a background that enable us to have effective internal auditing. One of the principles, demonstrate objectivities, right? And no, demonstrate integrity, maintain objectivities. The second one, allow the internal audits to, the third is demonstrate competency. Another one is exercise due professional care, right? Also makes us to maintain confidentiality, which is a big thing for us auditors. And it talks about the other guiding principle is authorized by the board, right? So we talk about the board, and we talk about our positioned, how we're positioned independently, and that we're overseen by the board and how that looks like. And then also about planning strategically, and this is where I'm talking about the audit plan and how we manage our resources, another principle. How we communicate effectively is another one, and how we enhance quality. So I know that we talk a big we're talk about enhancing a lot, and we have came a long way from where we were 3 years ago and to where we're now. And this is part of the enhancing the quality of the internal audit function. It talks about other principles, talking about planned engagements effectively, how we conduct engagement work, right, to make sure that we're using our time wisely. And the last one is also communicate engagement results and monitor action plans. And so that's what we do in the internal audit function at MES, is making sure that we're following the guidelines and we are using the resources that we're allowed effectively, and to control waste on our end. And we have, time is very valuable. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Condra. Board
You're
members, any
welcome.
questions? I do have a question. The findings that you had, if you could go back to that slide. I think it was. Yes. The segregation of duties. Now, is that something that has been resolved?
Yes, so we have right now management is working on their action plans. And it's a big project that's going on in IT. So it's basically looking at our system. So it is being worked on. And they're doing a good job. The chief of IT is making that his priority, and management, and actually Dr. Glass. So it's very important, and they're working on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Any other
welcome.
questions, committee members?
So I have, you can go to the other slides. So I wanted to give everyone an update of from when we started the billable effort, helping out the test group with their MVE COVID closeout project. We started in November, and as of April 2024, the hours we spent approximately 1,500 hours on this project, and our billable revenue that was attained for our efforts was approximately $45,000. Next slide. So as you guys saw, and at this point, I usually have a risk assessment document. However, due to our lack of resources, we weren't able to get that document done, but it's great for the new CAE to come in. That would be that person's job to do that. So that would help them to understand MES. And it's a great, that I thought when I first came in, it's a great onboarding exercise, or to understand the agency and understand our risks and understand the different groups and what they have to deal with. So when that person comes in, they would do that. But that didn't stop us from doing the FY25 and 26 audit plan. So in terms of the plan audits for FY25, based on meeting with the managing directors, interviewing their division chiefs, and sending a survey, we identified 5 audit plans, audits for FY25. The first one we looked at was, well, I'm just going to go by the number. So the -25 means that that would be the first audit for FY25. So that would, the priority would be Maryland Aviation Contract Compliance Review. That would be the first audit that we would be doing in FY25, dedicating for budgeted hours 350. And the next one would be review of water treatment systems, security and penetration. Would be a big review. So that would be allocated 800 hours. The next one would be Midshore 2 site management review. We would dedicate 400 hours to that. Next one would be the Popular Island contract management review, which is 400 hours. And the last but not least would be reviewing the biosolid billing process. And we're looking to dedicate 450 hours to that. It's, as you see from FY24, FY23, we had a lot of more centralized reviews. For FY25 and 26, we're looking more on concentrate on the groups and looking at contract compliance, site management, and also more in a group and moving away more from the HR and purchasing, because we identify that we need to focus back on the contracts and site management. So click, please. So for FY26, the first priority we have. Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
Biosolid is one word. And the thing is, the groups didn't even, they reviewed this draft. They didn't correct me. So for FY26, the first one would be to review the safety communication and implementation processes and concentrating on the Montgomery County grinding and MRF locations. We're dedicating 400 hours to that. The next one would be the inventory management review at Masonville. We're dedicating 350 hours. The next one would be review of the marketing contract management process. And marketing is basically dealing with EO, with like Leaf Grow and so forth that the environmental operation team manages. And we're dedicating 375 hours to that. The next one is review of the oversight of maintenance staff tasks. And we're dedicating 350 hours to that. And that's basically looking for the test group. And last but not least, we'll review the reimbursable contract agreements. And we're looking to do 400 hours for that one. So those hours are estimated, so it could take longer, it can be shorter, but it's just an estimate. And it's just we use those budgeted hours as a trend. So as the years go by, we'll know how to budget our time better based on past performance. Next slide. Questions?
Any questions, board members? Hearing none. I guess thank you, Ms. Condra.
You're welcome.
Our next agenda item is new or old business. Is there any other business anyone wishes to present in the open session? Hearing none. I will adjourn the meeting if there's no further business. The meeting is now.
Miss Jones, I do have one question. The deck you just went through, Miss Condra, are you able to share that with the board? I didn't see it in our materials.
That should have been in the material.
I can double check.
I didn't realize you wanted that sent out. I can send that after the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other? All right, hearing none. And since there's no further business, the meeting is now adjourned. The next audit committee meeting will be